My father has commanded me to enter into a political marriage. The Empress gestured towards my two personal handmaidens, Green Orchid and Purple Mist, and said, "Choose a substitute to take your place." As I extended my finger, I noticed a few lines of text drifting through the air. This wicked supporting character, unwilling to marry herself, drags her maidservant into the fray. What a depraved act. No worries, Green Orchid has our crown prince to protect her. The moment she boards the chariot of the Northern Rome, the crown prince will undoubtedly send someone to rescue her. Frowning, I slowly redirected my finger towards Purple Mist. The floating subtitles began to scroll once more. Choosing Purple Mist would be even worse. I recall in the original tale, the supporting character merely suggested selecting Purple Mist to the Empress, and the young general stormed into the princess's residence. The male protagonist certainly harbors no fear of the princess. After all, he is to be the future prince consort. Who wishes to take on that title? Were it not for the princess's relentless pursuit, he would have already roamed the world with the female lead. As I read this, my complexion turned pale, and I saw the subtitles continue to roll. There is no inherent flaw in a political marriage. Although the Northern Rome king is an antagonist, he has long harbored feelings for the princess. Her arrival would grant her the status of an empress. It is unfortunate that the Zhou dynasty broke their covenant first. Seeking a substitute bride has enraged the Northern Rome king, and soon their iron hooves shall trample across the gates of the Zhou. Upon reading this, I silently withdrew my finger. With a sigh directed at my mother, I declared, "Very well, I shall marry." 1. Upon uttering these words, an immediate silence enveloped the Jingren Palace. The expressions of those present varied greatly. Seated in the elevated position, I observed intently as a flicker of joy glimmered in the eyes of both Lulua and Xian. Indeed, they too were reluctant to go. Only my mother, seated beside me, was both enraged and anxious upon hearing my remarks. "Jianing, what kind of place is Bairong? It is a desolate land, barren and devoid of life. Have you considered the immense suffering that awaits you there?" From a young age, I had immersed myself in countless books and developed a passion for local chronicles. Hence, I was well aware of the impoverished nature of Bairong. Initially, when I learned that my father intended for me to engage in a marriage alliance, my heart felt burdened as if weighed down by 1,000 pounds. My mother endeavored tirelessly to devise plans for me. I had retained a glimmer of hope. Yet now, upon witnessing those ominous subtitles in the air, I realized that if I sought a substitute for the marriage, it would spell disaster for the Zhou dynasty. I dared not gamble any longer. As I pondered how to persuade my mother, she spoke up, "You are my only daughter. I cannot bear to send you into the jaws of a tiger. If you are unwilling to part with them, then I shall choose for you." With that, she casually pointed towards Lulua. Upon seeing this, Lulua's body slackened, and she wept. "I beseech you, your majesty, to show mercy. The empress is truly malicious. Unable to part with her own daughter, she wishes to send another's instead." Truly the biological mother of the protagonist, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. "Fear not, dear one, our crown prince shall arrive on the battlefield in 3 seconds. Did anyone else notice that the supporting character seems to be reconsidering her stance on the marriage? To the one above, the princess is merely jesting. This person is the epitome of hypocrisy. I furrowed my brow as I read the subtitles. Once I had finished the last line, I saw the grand doors of the Jingren Palace being forcefully flung open from the outside. A man clad in ceremonial robes stood silhouetted in the doorway. I glanced back at the subtitles in astonishment. My elder brother, the crown prince, had indeed arrived. 2. The moment my elder brother appeared, I distinctly sensed Lulua's posture straightening as if bolstered by his presence, and the tears in her eyes vanished. I observed discreetly as my mother raised an eyebrow and beckoned to him. "Ah, you've arrived at the perfect moment. Come, persuade your sister. She seems quite uncertain about this marriage alliance." Before my mother could finish her words, the crown prince abruptly interrupted her. "Mother, I knew Zhaoning would not easily consent to this marriage. She even contemplated having someone else take her place." He turned his gaze towards me, disappointment etched in his features. "I have always known you to be timid, but for such a significant matter as this, you would resort to such deceit. Lulua and Xian have grown up alongside you. How could you bear to send them in your stead? You have truly disappointed me." The crown prince's words came forth in rapid succession, each more forceful than the last, as if I were an irredeemable sinner. His gaze, once gentle, had transformed entirely. In my memories, he had always been a kind elder brother. This was the first time he had ever raised his voice at me. My heart ached. How could I be perceived in such a way by my brother? The subtitles continued to scroll. Ah, this must be the rage of a man driven to defend his beloved. Look at how grieved the princess appears. One might think she was wronged. She never wished to go in the first place. Otherwise, why would she not refuse when the empress summoned her? The crown prince has evidently harbored his frustrations towards the princess for quite some time, a foolish and simple-minded woman, were it not for her being the empress's daughter. He would hardly pay her any mind. My grip on the handkerchief tightened, tears welling in my eyes, blurring my vision. Memories flooded back to when I was 6 years old. Back then, my elder brother was not like this at all. At the age of 6, I contracted smallpox. The entire princess residence was sealed off, and even my mother could not enter, save for the imperial doctor. She could only pray for me at Mingda Temple, tears in her eyes. I lay upon my bed, feverish and somewhat delirious. The few servant girls who had tended to me also fell ill due to the smallpox. I hoarsely called out several times, yet no one responded. In my stupor, I felt a warm hand. I sensed a cup being brought to my lips. Thirsty. I drank eagerly from the cup before sinking back into a deep slumber. Those days were perhaps the most arduous of my life. Not a single ray of sunlight penetrated my chamber. I could only lie in bed, weeping into my pillow, calling out for my father and mother. As night fell, I cried until exhaustion overcame me. In a half-dream, I thought I heard someone singing a lullaby, reminiscent of my mother soothing me to sleep. Eventually, my fever subsided, and my mind cleared. The first thing I saw upon waking was my elder brother perched by my bedside. At that time, he was not yet the crown prince. Merely an overlooked prince born of a drunken encounter between my father and a palace maid. He appeared gaunt and pallid, save for his strikingly bright eyes. The servants in the cold palace bullied him mercilessly. Upon my awakening, I found him holding a teacup, our eyes meeting in a moment of shared understanding. I could see the tension in his gaze. He fumbled, I smiled at him. Elder brother, I am thirsty. I recognized him, once. In my mischievousness, I had crawled through a dog hole into the cold palace and witnessed a nurse striking a young boy. As I prepared to intervene, Lulua had pulled me aside, whispering, Princess, let us not meddle in the affairs of the third prince, otherwise, the empress will learn we have strayed into the cold palace. I hesitated, but seeing Lulua biting her lip, she urged, You are a princess. You may act willfully, but if the empress discovers I led you here, I shall face punishment. I did not wish to see Lulua suffer. Yet, I also could not bear the thought of my elder brother going hungry. Thus, I stealthily placed my last pouch of osmanthus cake in a corner. It was our first formal meeting. He then remarked, You must be the fourth sister? To my surprise, he recognized me. He stepped closer, holding out the teacup, his hands rough and dark, with traces of dirt beneath his nails. You are unwell, you must drink more water. His voice, however, was as clear and gentle as a mountain spring, reminiscent of the lullaby sung by my bedside. In June of that year, my smallpox was finally cured, and my health gradually improved. With my mother unable to bear children, my elder brother was fostered under her name from that day forth. Thus, he transitioned from a mere illegitimate child to a legitimate heir, no longer subject to bullying within the palace. My elder brother and I grew up together, and he always indulged me, bringing me delightful treasures from outside the palace to play with. Yet, this was the first time he had scolded me so sternly. The subtitles suggested that my elder brother approached me solely because of my status. Should I believe that? For, seeing me lost in thought, the crown prince grew increasingly agitated at my lack of response. What is this attitude? I am discussing serious matters with you, and you stand there dazed. You see, even the pothose beside you is far more astute than you. My thoughts finally extricated themselves from the labyrinth of memories. I glanced at the scrolling subtitles once more. The crown prince favors the clever. Only the pothose can keep pace with him. If the pothose were of noble birth like a princess, she would already be renowned across the land as a talented woman, unlike the princess, who is undeniably the greatest fool under heaven. Hey! Even though I dislike the princess, she could recite poetry at 3 and compose essays at 5. Surely that does not make her a fool. Is she not a fool? Back then, it was not the third prince who stayed by her bedside, feeding her water and lulling her to sleep. If one can make such a mistake, how can she not be considered dim-witted? Upon reading this, my gaze faltered momentarily. Suddenly, I sprang from my chair, startling my mother beside me. She assumed I was riled by the third brother's words and immediately defended me. No, third brother, this was my idea. Do not take your anger out on Zhao Ning. The crown prince's expression grew increasingly grave, clearly skeptical of her words. Mother, throughout Zhao Ning's life, whenever she has caused trouble, you have always chosen to shield her. But this time, it concerns a diplomatic marriage, a matter of state. If you continue to protect her, it will inevitably lead to her ruin. Hearing this, even my typically pliant temperament could not withstand the provocation. Third brother, though you are the crown prince, Mother is the matriarch of the nation. How can you behave so outrageously? The crown prince was taken aback by my words, retorting angrily, Zhao Ning, look at your wild demeanor. Even if you were to marry into Beirong, they may not want you. Just as he finished speaking, someone splashed tea all over him. My mother slammed her teacup down, visibly distressed, exclaiming, Chu Chengyu, do not forget how you obtained your position as crown prince. The crown prince's complexion shifted from green to pale, as though he had been struck at a vulnerable spot. His gaze towards me became dark and complex. I understood he was recalling the past. When my elder brother tragically passed away, my mother was consumed by sorrow. It was only after my birth that laughter returned to Jingren Palace. Later, when I fell ill, my mother, due to the third brother's care for me, implored father to foster him under her name. This was a privilege not granted to the other princes. 3 years ago, father summoned all the princes and princesses to assess our scholarly achievements. He tasked us with writing exam papers based on the current test questions. After collecting the papers, father retained only mine. He perused my work and remarked with a mix of pride and disappointment, if my child Zhao Ning were a boy, I would surely designate her as the heir. At that moment, I pondered how splendid it would be if I were indeed a boy. Subsequently, father had me select the best among the prince's essays. However, I succumbed to selfishness. Upon completing my selection, father's gaze deepened as he looked at me. I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. Ultimately, he said nothing, merely ruffled my hair and sighed. A couple of days later, after the court session, the third brother, brimming with enthusiasm, rushed to the princess's residence. It was then that I learned father, in front of all the court officials, praised the third brother for his excellent essay and intended to name him as the crown prince. At that time, I felt a mixture of joy and guilt. For I had read everyone's essays, and the best one was not the third brother's. The crown prince seemed to recall this moment, his confidence waning, his earlier bravado dissipating. He lifted his robe and knelt on one knee, confessing with remorse, Mother, this time, I was wrong. I was merely too anxious. He glanced at me and then at the pot hose kneeling beside him, as if arriving at a decision. He grasped her hand. I have privately pledged my life to the pot hose. I ask for your blessing in marriage. My mother was taken aback, both shocked and furious. I paid no attention to their ensuing conversation, for the third brother's words had confirmed the truth of the subtitles. He indeed harbored feelings for the pot hose. All these years, he had traversed between the crown prince's residence and the princess's palace. Was it truly out of affection for me, his sister, or simply because his beloved resided within the princess's palace? I turned to the pot hose, only to find her gaze entirely fixed on the third brother, her affection evident. All this time, they had exchanged glances right under my nose, and I was utterly oblivious. Was it really the third brother who attended to me during my illness? I sank back down, disheartened. They were correct. I truly was foolish. My mother did not immediately acquiesce to the marriage proposal, but seeing the third brother's insistence on protecting the pot hose, she ultimately relented. Very well, if the pot hose is unsuitable, then Ziyan shall stand in for Zhao Ning in the marriage alliance. My mother's stance was resolute. Ziyan dared not protest, her eyes glistening with tears. I frowned, saying, Mother, this marriage is my own affair. But my mother covered her head, exclaiming, Oh dear, you too, do not further provoke me. The matron escorted both the crown prince and me out of the palace. The crown prince appeared rather cheerful, declaring he would escort me back to the princess's residence. I shook my head in refusal. Seeing my aloofness, he attempted to grasp my hand, but I evaded him. His expression darkened. For the sake of a mere servant, you would treat me with such disdain? I regarded the third brother. This is something I should be asking His Highness the Crown Prince. Today, for the sake of a servant, you disregard my dignity as a princess and your mother's. In the future, when you ascend to the throne. Will you still remember us? I spoke these words both to vent my pent-up frustration and to test the third brother. His countenance immediately shifted. After a moment, he resumed his usual humble and gentle demeanor, softly coaxing, "Fourth sister, do not be angry. I have already crafted a kite. Tomorrow, if you are free, I will accompany you to fly it, all right?" He extended his hand, revealing delicate wounds on his fingers from crafting the kite for me. Suddenly, I recalled that just days ago, I had arranged to fly kites with the Crown Prince. He had indeed made a kite for me. Before I could feel touched, the subtitles began to scroll again. Only the princess would fall for such a childish ploy as kite flying. The wound on the Crown Prince's hand clearly came from making a kite for the pothos, while the princess's kite was merely fashioned from leftover scraps by his servants. I wager a coin that the princess will surely soften her heart again. Staring at the subtitles, I found myself momentarily dazed. Just moments ago, I had experienced a flicker of wavering in my heart. Yet now, the anger I had just quelled surged anew. I stepped back, creating distance between myself and the third brother, coldly stating, "Your Highness the Crown Prince. It was Zhao Ning who was thoughtless in the past. You should take your kite and fly it with someone else." I hurriedly exited the palace. I could not afford to linger. I needed to investigate the truth of the past immediately. However, as soon as I left the palace, I was taken aback. Today, I had arrived in my mother's carriage, and the princess's household had yet to arrange for a carriage. I would be forced to wait under the blazing sun for some time. I tilted my head back, feeling a bit dizzy. Due to the marriage alliance matter, I had not slept well these past few days. Just as I was feeling frustrated, a deep voice reached my ears. "Zhao Ning, what are you doing standing here?" I turned to see. My eyes widened suddenly, and my body instinctively straightened. Second brother. I found myself locked in a gaze with my second brother, Chu Jingwei. A tension more palpable than that experienced moments ago in the Jingren Palace. The second prince sighed, "Fourth sister, you need not be so anxious upon each encounter with me. I am hardly a beast that would devour you." I lowered my eyes, concealing a flicker of guilt and trepidation that lurked within. In truth, it was my second brother who had penned the most splendid essays in our youth. Though he held a voice of influence with our father, the emperor, he had never been particularly favored. I often felt a pang of remorse towards him, which over time morphed into a persistent ache in my heart. Furthermore, his perpetually aloof demeanor instilled a sense of fear in me from a young age. The carriage was enveloped in a tranquil silence, prompting me to furtively lift my gaze. To my astonishment, I noticed the subtitles flickering in the air. Having rejected the Crown Prince's carriage, the princess has indeed boarded the second prince's. She is truly a paragon of double standards. What has come over the princess today? Is she not usually terrified of the second prince, to the extent of avoiding him? Could it be that she has discovered that the one who tended to her during her illness years ago was not the Crown Prince, but rather the second prince? Chu Jingwei? I gasped, my complexion paling, cold sweat beading upon my brow. A large hand reached across the space between us, gently wiping the perspiration from my forehead. "Are you feeling warm?" His voice was cool and deep, intertwining with the melody of a lullaby I had once heard in dreams. I vaguely recalled that in the years following my recovery, I had implored my third brother to sing for me, but he had always stammered and deflected, claiming that such childish songs would tarnish his princely image. I grasped my second brother's hand, yearning for confirmation. "Second brother, would you sing me a nursery rhyme?" Chu Jingwei appeared momentarily taken aback, but hesitated not, covering his mouth to cough lightly. "If my singing displeases you, please do not hold it against me." Within the carriage, his melodious voice soon filled the air, clear and delightful. Little one rows a little boat, stealthily picking white lotuses, unaware of how to conceal her tracks. I murmured, recognizing it was indeed him. It had been my second brother who, disregarding his own safety, had administered medicine and sung me to sleep during my illness in the princess's residence all those years ago. How could I have mistaken him? Clutching his sleeve tightly, I implored, "Did you visit my estate when I had smallpox?" I was fervently eager to validate my thoughts, but had already gleaned the truth from the subtitles that had flashed by. Goodness. The princess has deduced that it was Chu Jingwei who cared for her during her illness. It seems her mind is still quite astute. Back then, Chu Jingwei, concerned for the princess, had stealthily infiltrated her residence, unwittingly falling ill himself and suffering from a high fever for several days. Otherwise, the third prince would not have had the opportunity to intervene. Subsequently, every time the second prince sought to converse with the princess, she would either evade him or be whisked away by the crown prince, leading to his gradual disillusionment. Reading this, I was consumed by an overwhelming sense of shame. Yet, my second brother gently ruffled my hair, his usual stern countenance softening. Fourth sister, you finally remember. The carriage bearing my brother continued on its way to the princess's residence, and my mood shifted several times throughout the journey. He broached the subject of my impending marriage, inquiring about my thoughts. If you do not wish to go, then do not go. The stability of our frontier does not hinge upon sacrificing a princess. Tomorrow, I shall speak to father and personally lead the charge against the Northern Rhone king. I was taken aback. My father, who usually doted on me, had commanded me to wed for the sake of the Zhou dynasty. My mother insisted upon the notion of a substitution, and even my protective elder brother had chosen to side with outsiders. As for my betrothed, he had yet to send a single word. None had inquired about my willingness. Much like the year I fell ill at 6, I lay within the vast confines of the princess's residence, passively awaiting my fate to be decided by others. This time, I refused to let it unfold in such a manner. I lifted my head, my gaze resolute, proclaiming, second brother, regardless of whether I go or not. I wish to make that decision for myself. Upon arriving at the princess's residence, my brother assisted me in disembarking, just as a figure on a brown steed approached with great speed, halting before the palace. Clad in martial attire, with his dark hair tied high, he possessed a striking countenance, albeit his gaze towards me was laced with an icy demeanor. It was my betrothed, General Lu Xiaojun, arriving with unexpected swiftness. The prior subtitles had all been confirmed by the crown prince, so I was not surprised by Lu Jinghong's arrival. However, I had not anticipated that upon exiting the palace, I would not even have a moment to sip hot tea before he appeared, galloping forth with such urgency, as if eager to protect his cherished one. I exhaled a sigh of exasperation and, bowing slightly to my brother, said, second brother, let us defer our tea for another day. He observed us quietly, offering no further inquiries. Once the carriage had disappeared from view, I withdrew my gaze and entered the princess's residence, believing that some farcical drama was better performed behind closed doors rather than in public view. Lu Jinghong followed me into the main hall. Noticing my silence, he could no longer restrain himself and immediately questioned, you are a princess, enjoying the comforts of the realm, bearing the weight of royal honor and disgrace. The emperor has commanded you to wed. It is your duty. Why must you drag Xian into this? I turned to face him, contemplating for a long while before finally uttering, if I were to say that if we wed today, my father would not force me into the marriage alliance. Would you agree? This had been my initial plan. On the year of my coming of age, my father had instructed me to choose a husband. I selected Lu Jinghong, not for his illustrious lineage as the heir of the Zhenghua house, nor for his remarkable looks or martial prowess, but because, as my mother asserted, a woman's purity is of the utmost value. At 15, I only remembered that Lu Jinghong was the first and only man to have kissed me. I felt a sense of responsibility toward him. Although my father had only verbally betrothed me, Lu Jinghong had conducted himself as if he were already my fiancé for all these years, never once rejecting this union. I had believed he harbored some feelings for me. Yet this time, Lu Jinghong hesitated. He took a step back, clasping his hands. Princess, I cannot marry you at present. Seeing my silence, Lu Jinghong awkwardly defended himself. If we marry, our pact will disrupt the alliance. The emperor would surely hold the general's house accountable, and my family would become the target of public ire. Lu Jinghong was always like this, prioritizing the reputation of the general's house above all else, casting aside personal emotions. Since our engagement, he had remained steadfast, never overstepping the boundaries. I had always thought he was merely reserved and unversed in matters of affection, and that patience would suffice. Yet today, he was willing to forsake me for Xian, opting for the harsh northern lands instead. I probed further into his feelings. Indeed, that is why I suggested that my mother designate Xian as a princess, allowing her to go in my stead. Would that not suffice? His eyes flared with anger as he looked up at me. Why must it be Xian? Why not Greenlow? Greenlow is favored by the crown prince, so it is not an option. But Xian she is. You like her? I do not. Lu Jinghong vehemently denied. How could I possibly have feelings for a maid? Xian is the true heroine. She is also the daughter of a high-ranking official. reduced to servitude due to her family's downfall, and is no less than a princess. Is the princess not shameless? The male lead does not even care for her. Yet she continues to pursue him. Surely the princess does not still believe that the boy who saved her from drowning and performed artificial respiration was Lu Jinghong? Mistaking two saviors, it is no wonder she is relegated to a supporting role. Wait, what is artificial respiration? No, that cannot be right. They say that the one who saved me back then was not Lu Jinghong. After much contemplation, I resolved to verify my suspicions. I approached Lu Jinghong and stood before him, my feet planted firmly. Taking a deep breath, I rose onto my toes, only to halt just before our lips could meet. I furrowed my brow and inquired, "Why do you not evade?" Lu Jinghong's ears flushed crimson, as if he might bleed from the embarrassment. If this can quell the princess's wrath, I shall not retreat. My fingers brushed against his lips, and I felt his body stiffen at that instant. I immediately withdrew my hand. The atmosphere was awry, the sensation was incorrect. I spoke coldly, "Lu Jinghong, when I accompanied my father in disguise for an inspection, I accidentally fell into the water. Were you the one who rescued me?" Lu Jinghong's gaze flickered, and after a long pause, he replied, "Yes." I averted my eyes, instinctively gazing into the void, and indeed, I saw the subtitles begin to scroll once more. Back then, the Lu family earned their titles and promotions by saving the princess. To deny it would be an act of treason. When will the princess realize that it was the king of Barong who pulled her from the water? Who sacrificed his first kiss to save her and has harbored feelings for her all these years? Isn't this akin to the situation with the crown prince? The princess has mistakenly identified two benefactors. It is quite foolish indeed. I felt somewhat dizzy. After taking a generous sip of tea, my mind began to clear. They claim that it was the king of Barong who saved me? Considering the timeline, the then king of Barong was merely one of his many sons. It was rumored that he had committed patricide and fratricide to ascend the throne, employing cruel and ruthless methods that struck fear into the hearts of the Barong people. And now he sought to marry me. The Zhou dynasty had faced continuous natural disasters in recent years, while Barong had grown formidable. The ministers urged my father to consent to this marriage, no matter the cost. Why would such a man have appeared in the Zhou dynasty back then? And why did he choose to save me? I suppressed my myriad of doubts. As I continued to observe Lu Jinghong, the youthful affection I once felt for him gradually faded. He was intelligent and exceptional, admired by all the daughters of the Zhou dynasty. Such a man would indeed be a fitting consort. Yet, upon reading those subtitles, I realized that Lu Jinghong had never been fond of me, but rather of Xian. A sense of relief washed over me. It was not that I felt no sorrow, rather it was a melancholy born from the realization of being dismissed by another. Not the despair of betrayal by a beloved. Coming to this understanding, I no longer harbored resentment toward Lu Jinghong. I was too obstinate. Believing that granting you the title of consort was an act of gratitude. Lu Jinghong gazed at me in surprise. "I shall speak with my father, from this day forth. Our engagement shall be dissolved, and we will no longer be entangled in matters of marriage." As soon as I finished speaking, Lu Jinghong appeared momentarily stunned, his disbelief palpable. "You are willing to go to the marriage alliance?" I did not respond. He grew anxious. "That is not what I meant. I merely think that the idea of substituting brides is inappropriate. However, we can consider alternative solutions." I looked at him with a hint of derision. "What alternatives?" Lu Jinghong asserted, "As long as the princess can abandon the notion of having Xian substitute for her, I can persuade His Majesty to revoke the decree for you to marry." "And how do you propose to persuade him?" "I am willing to personally lead the troops to engage in battle against Barong." He echoed the sentiments of my second brother. Yet this time, as I listened, I felt no stirrings of emotion. In the heart of a martial figure like Lu Jinghong, there was a persistent advocacy for conflict over peace. I replied, "Barong is currently strong and well-equipped, while the Zhou dynasty has suffered from drought in recent years. Where will you procure the provisions necessary for war?" Lu Jinghong responded matter-of-factly, "The wealthy have reserves. If they lack them, we can borrow from them, or we can increase taxes. With tens of millions of households in the Zhou dynasty, do you truly believe we cannot gather the necessary supplies?" He spoke so casually, yet failed to grasp that with each tax increase, countless commoners would face starvation. I found myself relieved to have discerned his true nature ahead of time. Previously, I had regarded him as a savior, viewing him through a somewhat romanticized lens. Now, however, He appeared to me as an insufferable frog croaking incessantly, even though the patricidal king of Beirong was despicable. He paled in comparison to the repugnance I felt for Lu Jinghong, who viewed the lives of the common people as mere trifles. I coldly stated, "There is no need for the general to concern himself. I am a princess, indulging in the people's resources, bearing the honor and disgrace of the royal family. If my father commands me to enter a marriage alliance, it is my duty as a princess." I retorted with his own words. Lu Jinghong's countenance immediately darkened, and the atmosphere grew tense. Just then, a voice intervened, shattering the standoff. "The princess speaks wisely. This matter need not trouble General Lu." Chu Jingwei arrived, accompanied by a retinue of attendants. He looked at me and gestured to those behind him, saying, "I happened upon the market and saw some delightful novelties that I thought you would appreciate, so I purchased them for you." His servants laid out a bountiful array of items. He turned to Lu Jinghong, his gaze suddenly sharp. "Jianing is a princess of the Zhou dynasty. Her marriage is not for an outsider like you to dictate." I understood that my second brother had returned, clearly concerned about Lu Jinghong bullying me. By purchasing these items and making such statements, he aimed to bolster my position, conveying to Lu Jinghong that although my father had commanded me to enter a marriage alliance, as long as I remained in the Zhou dynasty, I would still be a princess. Behind me stood a multitude of royal kin bearing the surname Chu, not subject to Lu Jinghong's whims. Lu Jinghong suddenly grasped the situation, his expression complex as he conceded, "I have overstepped. After my second brother dismissed the unwelcome presence, he turned to me and said, 'I heard everything you said. Just remember, you have us brothers behind you.'" My eyes grew moist. "Second brother, could you do me one more favor? Please take me back to the palace." Upon exiting the imperial study, I found my second brother waiting at the door. He inquired, "Have you truly made up your mind?" I nodded, yes. Suddenly, he handed me a book. "What is this?" "Information I gathered about the King of Beirong. I had intended to present it to you today." I accepted the book and was about to peruse it when my brother continued, "Perhaps the King of Beirong is not as dreadful as you imagine. Marrying him might be preferable to marrying Lu Jinghong." As he spoke, he produced another booklet. I queried, "And what is this?" "Information I compiled regarding Lu Jinghong." Seeing this, I couldn't help but chuckle. The weight I had felt upon leaving the Emperor's study lifted suddenly. Chu Jingwei was taken aback. "What are you laughing at?" I teased, "Second brother. Are you some sort of information broker?" Chu Jingwei chuckled. Upon returning to the princess's residence, I opened the booklet to read. In the 12th year of Tianli, in mid-June, military provisions were stolen. Lu Jinghong found the maid Xian and seduced her with his charm, persuading her to divert the provisions from the princess's residence to the general's manor, thus resolving the crisis. The more I read, the more alarmed I became. I recalled 2 years prior when a flood of refugees surged into the capital. The governor of the capital had driven the refugees to the outskirts, and upon learning of this, I immediately had Xian accompany me to distribute porridge to the needy outside the city. It was no wonder that despite purchasing a large quantity of rice at a high price to aid the populace, I could not sustain it for even 7 days, helplessly witnessing hundreds of refugees perish. All of this had stemmed from an insider's betrayal. After that, the two of them had become entangled. Whenever I wrote to Lu Jinghong, Xian was always the first to volunteer to deliver my messages. As this letter journeyed forth, it found its way to Lu Jinghong's bed. Many within the general's residence had heard the raucous sounds emanating from his chamber, yet I remained blissfully unaware. Enraged, I forcefully closed the tome. My gaze, however, flickered towards another book. Yet, as my hand grazed its cover, I recoiled as if it were searing. Very well. A tyrant who has slain his father and brother holds little allure. Better to avoid further vexation. Upon learning that I had personally approached Father Emperor to consent to the marriage alliance, Mother fell ill. The Crown Prince, however, interjected, "Hasn't Mother declared that Xian shall take my place? What is this commotion that has led to her illness?" Ever since uncovering the truth, I felt a certain awkwardness whenever I beheld the Crown Prince. The bond we shared over the years was genuine, yet it had been founded upon a misapprehension. Unlike with Lu Jinghong, I could not readily shift my perspective to confront him. "Your Highness, after my departure, I must trouble you to take extra care of Mother." The Crown Prince frowned, a flicker of inscrutable emotion passing through his eyes. How could the Crown Prince truly regard her as anything but an enemy, knowing that his birth mother was executed by the Empress? Once the emperor passes, the Zhou dynasty shall belong to the crown prince, granting him the opportunity for vengeance against those who wronged his mother. According to the original narrative, after the Northern Rome's resounding defeat of the Zhou, it was the crown prince who personally delivered the princess to the enemy, subjecting her to a cruel fate at the hands of hostile soldiers. Yet, it seems the plot is diverging. Without the princess seeking a substitute, will the Northern Rome still march against the Zhou? As I cradled the medicinal broth, my hand faltered upon reading these lines, causing the bowl to slip and shatter on the ground. I swiftly concealed my scalded hand behind my back, but my eyes were fixed intently on my third brother. After departing from Jingren Palace, I sought out my second brother. Presenting him with the handkerchief stained with Mother's medicine, I implored him to investigate the precise ingredients of the prescription. I dared not gamble. If the crown prince truly harbored animosity towards Mother during her illness, might he tamper with her medicine? My second brother uttered naught, seemingly supportive of my every endeavor. 2 days later, he returned with the handkerchief. The ingredients found on the handkerchief are safe. I exhaled in relief, thinking perhaps I had overreacted. Yet, my brother's demeanor remained tense. The imperial physician's prescription poses no issue, but I noticed that Jingren Palace has recently procured a considerable quantity of lilacs. Prolonged exposure to these lilacs could interact with the medicine's components, transforming it into a chronic poison, rendering one bedridden and muddled. Fury caused my hands to tremble. No wonder Mother had been so disoriented during my visits. I rushed to inquire among the servants of Jingren Palace, and indeed, the lilacs had been ordered by Chu Chengyu. Father Emperor conferred upon me the title of Princess Huayang, bestowing upon me a bridal trousseau worth 10 miles of red silk. Initially, he intended for LVLV and Xian to accompany me as maids, but I declined. Their hearts lay elsewhere. Forcing them to accompany me to the northern territories would only breed resentment, and they could not be truly loyal. Before my departure, Mother lay languishing, unable to bid me farewell in person. Father postponed the morning court session, allowing me to ascend his imperial sedan. He trailed behind, step by step, escorting me to the palace gates. He lifted me from the sedan. I vaguely recalled my childhood, when I would insist on sharing his carriage and he would relent, cradling me in his arms. Yet, I had grown. Father could no longer carry me as he once did and merely supported me as I disembarked. Once I steadied myself. Father spoke. Zhaoning, remember, you will forever be the most esteemed princess of the Zhou dynasty. And Father will always be your pillar of support. My eyes brimmed with unshed tears. On that day, when I visited the imperial study to seek Father's counsel on the marriage alliance, I witnessed him passionately debating with the ministers on my behalf. The strands of gray in his hair had multiplied, a testament to his worries. It dawned on me that he, like Mother, wished to refrain from sending me away. Yet, as the father of the realm, he could not solely be the father of Zhaoning. I understood him better, and my respect for him deepened. At such close proximity, I noticed the increased lines around his eyes, realizing with a start that Father had aged. He deserved a successor who was broad-minded, wise, and benevolent. Father, do you recall the time you asked me which among the essays on saving the people was the finest? That day, Zhaoning spoke of falsehood. The marriage caravan proceeded towards the city gates. Lu Jinghong held the reins of his horse, blocking my carriage, claiming he had words to share with me. The wind lifted the curtain of the carriage, revealing Lu Jinghong's despondent visage. Gone was his former vibrancy. Yet, as the breeze swiftly retreated, the curtain fell. Akin to the ripples once stirred in my youthful heart, now settled with the passage of time. I made no effort to halt my stride, continuing with the marriage caravan towards the northern Rome. As we traveled, the scenery transformed. The lush plains gave way to undulating mountains, the weather growing increasingly frigid and arid. The curtain of the carriage, fashioned from delicate silk, could barely withstand the dust and wind. I layered it further to mitigate the encroaching grit. Thus, we journeyed for over a month, finally reaching the border between the Zhou and northern Rome. During these days, I had perused all the books I had brought. Yet my gaze lingered on the tome gifted by my second brother. By some uncanny fate, I placed the book upon my lap and opened it. My eyes widened involuntarily. Within its pages, a general clad in gleaming iron armor, wielding a bloodied silver spear, pointed skyward. The setting sun elongated his silhouette, his battle robe billowing behind him. Clearly, Lu Jinghong was also a renowned general of the Zhou, yet in comparison to this figure, I grasped the true essence of a war god. I suddenly regained my composure. Was this the king of Northern Rome? I harbored a somewhat stereotypical impression of the king of Northern Rome. I recalled the year Lu Jinghong returned home with the Lu family army, having suffered defeat in battle. It was said that the venerable General Lu fell to a young boy's spear, the very boy who had since become the king of Northern Rome. I had been curious to inquire about the boy's appearance, to which Lu Jinghong, in a fit of frustration, described a green-faced, fanged monster with the stature of a tiger, most unsightly. Thus, the king of Northern Rome was etched in my mind as a figure akin to the grim specter of a ghost. On one occasion, I dreamed of him, jolting me awake, and I consoled myself that I would never encounter him. Little did I know I was not only destined to meet him but also to marry him. Turning back, I scrutinized the illustrations in the book my brother had provided. Each page depicted this man, in battle among shepherds, tending to the wounded. If he were indeed the king of Northern Rome, why did he seem so different from the tales spun about him? A vague, ineffable sensation began to stir within me. This feeling would ultimately find validation upon my encounter with the king of Northern Rome. As we crossed into Northern Rome, I sensed an unexpected hush enveloping the caravan. I lifted the curtain for fresh air, only to be startled by a profile both familiar and alien. I hastily dropped the curtain, slapping my face, wondering if I were still dreaming, as if the figure from the illustrations had materialized before me. When I dared to lift the curtain once more, I was met with a pair of profound eyes. Huayang, do you have any commands? Huayang was my title, and it was the first time someone had addressed me thus. My heart skipped a beat, and I stammered, and no, nothing. Thus, this individual rode alongside my caravan, escorting us toward the capital of Northern Rome, devoid of the airs befitting a king, while I remained within the carriage. Occasionally, I would stealthily lift the curtain to catch a glimpse of him, only to find myself caught in the act each time. It was not until we approached the capital that a torrential downpour ensued. The drenched man, resembling a drowned rat, climbed into my carriage, and we exchanged glances, both of us somewhat apprehensive. He inquired whether I had eaten well and slept soundly during the journey. I merely nodded, too timid to elaborate. You know, it rarely rains in our Northern Rome, he remarked. I nodded again, only to realize something was amiss. Lifting my gaze to him, I queried, so? He scratched his head and replied, well, it must be the rain god welcoming you to Northern Rome by sending this rain. His foolish grin resembled that of a simpleton, entirely unlike the formidable figure depicted in the paintings, who could claim lives with a mere blink. As we ventured further from the capital, my heart grew increasingly restless. This was my first journey far from home, and the man across from me seemed to sense my discomfort, refraining from speaking to avoid disturbing me. Unbeknownst to me, I eventually drifted off to sleep. Suddenly, the carriage jolted violently, startling me awake. Upon regaining consciousness, I saw that the man had vanished. Curiosity compelled me to lift the curtain, revealing the figure of the Northern Rome king, straining to lift a wheel that had become mired in the mud. Could one man truly lift a carriage that 8 others could not budge? I was skeptical. Upon noticing my descent from the carriage, the Northern Rome king unexpectedly shed his outer garment, revealing his well-defined musculature. I gasped and instinctively covered my eyes, yet I could not resist peeking through my fingers. At that moment, the subtitles that had vanished since my departure from the Zhou dynasty began to roll once more. Did I miss something? How did the plot twist so dramatically? Indeed, you read that correctly. The notorious and bloodthirsty Northern Rome king Helianfeng is now being tamed by the princess. Yet, the supporting character has chosen a favorable path for herself, as it is said that in the original narrative, the Northern Rome king possesses the prowess to bed 9 women in one night. I could not help but gasp. Was it the subtitles that left me breathless? Or was it witnessing Helianfeng actually lift the carriage single-handedly? He even spun it around in front of me, his eyebrows raised in triumph, as if to say he had finally elicited a smile from me. Only after he had securely placed the carriage back on solid ground did he appear satisfied. During my days in Northern Rome, Helianfeng treated me exceptionally well. Concerned that I might struggle to adapt, he had meticulously constructed a residence identical to that of the princess's palace for my stay. He had generously hired chefs from the Zhou dynasty and would frequently cook for me, perfectly attuned to my preferences, as if he had known me for ages. One day, As he pitifully clutched a blanket, preparing to sleep on the floor, I patted the space beside me and said, "The ground is cold. You may sleep here tonight." Ah, the Northern Rhone King, this rascal, has feigned misery for days, merely biding his time for this moment. Princess, do not regret it. Inviting a deity is easy, but sending one away is not. And will we still be able to enjoy this for free? My eyes widened in disbelief as I contemplated my decision. To my astonishment, Helian Fong seized the opportunity and swiftly silenced me with a kiss. The following day, I awoke with aches and pains, only to find him standing at my bedside, brimming with energy, holding a bowl of soy milk, waiting for me to rise. I shot him a disapproving glare. He blinked innocently and said, "You smell too good." I couldn't resist. I hurled a pillow at him, but he deftly dodged it, managing to keep the soy milk unspilled. He looked at me with a pitiful expression and remarked, "It's not like we haven't kissed before." I picked up another pillow, yet ultimately refrained from throwing it, suddenly amused by his cheeky demeanor. Thank goodness it was he who saved me all those years ago. After the alliance between the Zhou dynasty and Northern Rhone, the resulting camaraderie deterred other small bordering nations from incursion. Contrary to the Zhou's beliefs, Northern Rhone was not a desolate wasteland. Rather, it was abundant with cattle, sheep, and vast grasslands. The mountains were replete with rare herbs and exotic beasts. I adapted Zhou agricultural techniques to suit the northern terrain, significantly alleviating the hardships of the local nomads. Everything was progressing toward a brighter future. 3 years later, I learned that I was 2 months pregnant. Helian Fong rejoiced, consuming 3 bowls of rice that very night and granting a holiday to the palace staff. Yet, at that moment, I caught sight of the subtitles. Northern Rhone did not invade the Zhou dynasty, but it seems the Zhou is still facing upheaval. The emperor is gravely ill. If the supporting character does not return soon, she may miss the chance to see the old emperor one last time. This narrative has become untenable. It was promised that the crown prince would ascend, but instead, the old emperor has deposed him and relegated him to commoner status. All because he embezzled public funds and conspired to poison the empress. The emperor showing him mercy is already magnanimous. Lu Jinghong, the male lead, has also become a shadow of himself. Since the princess's departure, he has lost all ambition, languishing in taverns and brothels. Is this truly our male lead? It's futile. In this tale, only the second prince is diligently pursuing a career. Helian Fong, with his romantic whims, is hardly reliable. Helian Fong insisted on accompanying me back to the Zhou dynasty to pay respects to my family. Upon hearing of my return to the capital, my father was delighted and vowed to take his medicine diligently until my arrival. My second brother mentioned he had gathered numerous new trinkets to bring to Northern Rhone for me. My mother also wrote, expressing her concern for my safety on the journey due to my pregnancy. The journey was arduous, but we finally arrived in the capital. The streets were lined with citizens welcoming us joyfully. I soon learned that my decision to marry into Northern Rhone had been extolled by my second brother among the populace as an act of self-sacrifice. In recent years, the Zhou dynasty had experienced peace, allowing it to flourish, and trade with Northern Rhone continued. The people enjoyed prosperity and health, attributing their good fortune to me, the Princess of Huayang, who had united with Northern Rhone. Upon learning of my return to pay respects, they rose before dawn to clean the streets, hang lanterns, and adorn them with flowers, all in hopes of leaving a favorable impression on the Northern Rhone king regarding my family. As I sat in the carriage, witnessing the familiar faces of the old capital, tears welled in my eyes. Helian Fong clasped my hand proudly and declared, in the hearts of the Zhou people, "You are the most courageous and wise princess." I smiled faintly, neither confirming nor denying his words. Only I knew the truth. I was neither brave nor wise. When faced with the prospect of marriage, I had contemplated fleeing, only to be chastised by my third brother for my foolishness and indulgence, and labeled selfish by Lu Jinghong. Yet, in the face of such grave matters, I held firm to my principles. As the eldest princess of the Zhou dynasty, I bore the weight of its honor and disgrace and was prepared to shoulder the corresponding responsibilities. At that moment, I truly felt the immense gravity of the title bestowed upon me by my father as the eldest princess. I visited my father and mother. My father appeared somewhat healthier, yet he still lay in bed. I exchanged a few words with my second brother. When I prepared to leave the Zhou dynasty, I had confided in him my suspicions regarding my third brother's intent to poison our mother. I had little time to investigate and could only place my hopes in my second brother. The matter of the crown prince attempting to poison the empress was of utmost importance. My second brother must have prepared for a long time before convicting Chu Chengyu. However, since becoming regent, he had been exceedingly busy and could not spare much time to converse with me before hastening away again. On my way back to the princess's residence, I encountered a beggar, a man who had been cruelly disabled and was now clinging to life against the wall. Yet, as my carriage passed, he summoned an astonishing strength to grasp the wheel tightly. I ordered the carriage to halt. Helian Feng attempted to disembark to investigate, but I stopped him, for I recognized him. Before me stood a beggar, none other than my brother, the deposed prince, reduced to a commoner. Our eyes met, and his gaze sparkled with an unusual brilliance, reminiscent of the first time he laid eyes on me when I was but 6 years old. "Fourth sister, it is I, your third brother," he implored, clutching the carriage window with desperation. "Sister, could you plead with our father and mother to take me back?" He had grown significantly thinner and darker. My gaze fell upon his hands, once noble and delicate, now rough and soiled, dirt lodged beneath his nails. The scene felt hauntingly familiar. On an impulse, I extended the bag of pastries I had intended for my own indulgence towards him. Upon receiving it, Chu Chengyu opened it only to find not gold or silver, but mere pastries, and his face contorted with rage. "Zhao Ning, do you take me for a beggar? To dismiss me with a mere bag of pastries? Do not forget, it was I who stayed by your side during your bout with smallpox, feeding you water and lulling you to sleep." At this, my expression darkened. Helian Feng signaled to the guards, and they dragged Chu Chengyu away. Before the curtain of the carriage fell, I cast one last remark. "I certainly remember, but that person was not you." Chu Chengyu's face froze in disbelief. He opened his mouth to retort, but his voice was drowned out by the throng of onlookers. My carriage was not one he could pursue. No matter how unwilling he was, he ultimately returned to pick up the bag of pastries. However, upon opening it and catching a whiff of that familiar aroma, he momentarily lost himself in nostalgia. As a child, while suffering in the cold palace, starved and tormented by the matron, he had once spotted a bag of osmanthus cakes tucked away in a corner. He had vowed that if he ever escaped that cold palace, he would seek out the kind soul who had bestowed such pastries and treat her with kindness. Chu Chengyu, disregarding the grime on his hands, hastily stuffed a piece of osmanthus cake into his mouth and then another. In his haste, he choked, tears springing to his eyes, which mingled with the dirt on his face, revealing patches of pale skin. He bowed his head, his tears soaking the pastry wrapper, his voice heavy with regret. "Zhao Ning, it was I who was wrong from the very beginning. The princess is quite discerning. Her osmanthus cakes are specially made, a flavor unattainable elsewhere." Initially, Lulua deceived him into believing the osmanthus cakes were her gift, and the prince, in his naivety, fell deeply for her, only to discover that she ultimately chose to abandon him, taking all his wealth with another. Did he not profess a fondness for clever women? Partners are akin to birds of a feather. When calamity strikes, they scatter, such is the nature of the astute. Where are those who once praised Lulua? Come forth and witness the prince's current plight. I glanced at these subtitles, my eyes drifting away. The bond between Chu Chengyu and me had withered away. What lay ahead was of no concern to me. Yet, upon returning to the capital, I unexpectedly encountered another familiar face. My father hosted a family banquet, inviting several officials and their families to honor me as the princess of the alliance. As I took my seat, I felt more than one piercing gaze upon me, particularly after Lu Jinghong entered with his wife. Whispers filled the air, and the subtitles began to buzz with excitement. The princess is married, and the male lead too has wed. Now, both ex and current partners gather in one place, a true arena of emotional turmoil. But what has become of Lu Jinghong? Once the male lead, he now appears so haggard, pallid, with dark circles beneath his eyes, as if drained of life. In contrast, the antagonist Helian Feng is invigorated, brimming with vigor. If I were the princess, I too would choose the king of Beirong. Have you noticed? Since her pregnancy, the princess's complexion has grown increasingly radiant, her beauty more pronounced, eclipsing Lu Jinghong's wife and concubine. I was acutely aware that Lu Jinghong was watching me. His gaze, thick with longing, had not ceased since I took my seat. When our eyes met, A glimmer ignited in his, and he rose, cup in hand, approaching me. Zhao Ning. It has been a long time. After serving Helian Feng a dish, I lazily replied, General Lu, you are my subject, and I am your sovereign. You ought to address me as your highness. Lu Jingong was taken aback, seemingly unprepared for the distance that had grown between us. Yet, he held his cup aloft, adopting a stance that suggested he would not leave until I drank with him. I felt exasperated, ready to dismiss him, when Helian Feng, in an instant, seized the cup from Lu Jinghong's hand, replacing it with a large bowl filled to the brim with liquor. Lu Jinghong, a warrior accustomed to combat, was caught off guard by the ease with which his possession was taken, and his expression soured as he glared at Helian Feng. I was unsure of Helian Feng's intentions, but I observed him clinking his bowl against Lu Jinghong's. Real men drink from large bowls. This cup is too diminutive, frivolous. Surely General Lu is not afraid to drink. The two then engaged in a contest of drinking. I cast a pleading glance at my second brother, who had been appointed by our father to preside over the banquet. Yet he did not intervene and even joined the fray. The other noble families around us eagerly watched, wagering on who would prevail. During my time in Barong, I had never witnessed Helian Feng drink in my presence, yet I was astonished to discover his considerable capacity. No one could outdrink him. After the feast, my second brother pulled Helian Feng aside for another round. Seeing him so merry, I did not hinder him. My sister-in-law engaged me in conversation until our little nephew awoke, prompting her to soothe him. I then took a seat by the lakeside with my maidservant, seeking a moment's respite. From a distance, I saw Lu Jinghong return. A sense of foreboding washed over me, and I rose swiftly to retreat in the opposite direction. To my dismay, Lu Jinghong utilized his agility to cross the lake, intercepting my path. His cheeks flushed from drink, he exclaimed, Zhao Ning, I have missed you dearly over these past 2 years. He reached out as if to embrace me, but I evaded his advance. He turned, looking at me with a dazed expression. Do you know? Since your departure from the capital, I have been despondent. It was then I finally understood my feelings. Zhao Ning, will you return to me? Let us be as we once were. I retreated to the artificial mountain, instructing my maidservant to summon help. Lu Jinghong, you are wed, and so am I. How could we possibly return to the past? Cease this drunken folly. Lu Jinghong waved his hand dismissively, his body swaying slightly, yet his gaze remained clear. No, I am not drunk. Zhao Ning, as long as you are willing, I will find a way. You do not truly favor that Helian Feng, do you? Your union is merely a political arrangement. Your heart belongs to me. I do not love you. No, you do. If not, why would you have chosen me when the Emperor allowed you to select your consort? I let out a cold laugh. I chose you because I believed you were the one who saved me from drowning. But Lu Jinghong, do you still intend to deceive me? The person who rescued me was not you. Before leaving the capital, I had tasked my second brother with an investigation. That year, the Lu family had faltered, allowing assassins to infiltrate. When I was abducted and fell into the lake, Lu Jinghong was not present. He was not adept at swimming and could not possibly have saved me. Yet, inexplicably, when I regained consciousness, he was by my side, and when I inquired, he spoke ambiguously, fearing our father would blame the Lu family's guards for their negligence, thus claiming the credit for the rescue as his own. Lu Jinghong argued, I intended to save you. I simply arrived too late after the assassins had fled. Is that reason enough for you to change your affections? Upon learning the truth, I had struggled with my emotions, but clarity soon followed. Lu Jinghong, youthful infatuations are shallow and cannot withstand the trials of time. Now that you have both a wife and a concubine, with Xian also married to you, why do you not cherish the one before you, and insist on entangling yourself with me? I endeavored to calm Lu Jinghong. Yet, Lu Jinghong seemed to have misunderstood the situation and replied, I see now. You are feeling jealous, aren't you? It was Xian who pursued me back then. I hold no affection for her now. If it troubles you, I can dismiss her at once. She is merely a concubine. Xian merely a concubine? I glanced towards the rocky outcrop, where a corner of her purple attire was visible, and exclaimed, You once quarreled with me over her, and yet you only took her as a concubine? Lu Jinghong sneered coldly. She is but a servant girl. How could she ever be worthy of being a general's wife? Even before she was wed, she was already scheming to ensnare men, nothing more than a courtesan. Indeed, the Empress intended to bestow her upon me as a wife, but I refused. Only you, princess, are worthy of being my spouse. I responded with a soft "oh," carefully placing a hand on my abdomen. But as far as I know, you wed a new wife last year. Lu Jinghong replied anxiously. Her father perished on the battlefield. My grandfather took pity on her, so I had no choice but to marry her. Such a woman might bring misfortune to her father, and perhaps even to her husband. I have long intended to divorce her. 3 years had passed since we last met, and Lu Jinghong had changed considerably. Once composed and reserved, he now revealed his true nature after a few drinks, his words coarse and unrefined. It was only today that I fully grasped the repugnant aspect of his character. Observing the two figures approaching from behind him, I had no intention of warning him. Assuming my softened demeanor indicated an opportunity, Lu Jinghong proposed that if I nodded in agreement, he would write a divorce decree immediately upon his return. However, he was not afforded the chance to leave the palace. Before my very eyes, he was struck down by his wife and concubine. At that moment, my vision was obscured from behind, a familiar aura enveloping me. Do not look. It is tainted. Lu Jinghong was rendered a fool, while the general's wife and Xian were imprisoned for injuring him. I interceded on their behalf, securing their reprieve from the death penalty. Following this incident, the general's household fell into ruin. Old General Lu, heartbroken, ceased to manage family affairs. With no one to attend to him, Lu Jinghong soiled himself in bed, the room reeking, and the servants unwilling to enter and clean. I witnessed Lu Jinghong's tragic fate through the subtitles. So tragic, he is the most unfortunate male lead I have encountered. He forced Xian to be his concubine. Abusing her daily, the female lead was driven to madness, and it is remarkable that she has endured this long. The princess has surprisingly fared the best. Who remembers her original fate? On the day of my departure from the capital, Chu Qingyu chased after my carriage, limping as he approached, proudly presenting to me. Fourth sister, third brother made you a kite, and this time it is truly crafted by his own hands. Did we not agree to go kite flying together? His hands were bloodied and marked with scratches. I lowered the carriage curtain. Helian Feng inquired, "Do you enjoy flying kites?" I pondered for a moment before shaking my head. It was Greenvine who suggested the idea, prompting me to express my desire to Chu Qingyu to go out and fly kites in the spring. Since the birth of my daughter, those strange subtitles had ceased to appear. Yet, in the dead of night, I dreamt of a woman clad in splendid garments, being expelled from the country by soldiers from distant lands. They surrounded her, tearing her clothing, ripping her hairpins, and forcing her legs apart. The woman wailed in anguish, desperately turning her head. Upon seeing her face, I jolted awake, only to feel a large hand cover my dampened palm. Helian Feng helped me sit up, patting my back. "Did you have another nightmare?" I nodded, resting my chin on his shoulder, panting as I rasped, "Helian Feng, will you still wage war against the Zhou dynasty? You have asked many times." "I do not care, swear it." "Very well, I swear that as long as I am in Barong, I shall never attack the Zhou dynasty." "Did you truly kill your father and brother?" I timidly inquired. He hesitated before replying, "Yes." I did not press further. Even though history would record his regicide and fratricide, in the hearts of the Barong people and mine, he was far from a tyrant. Helian Feng, lost in thought, tightened his embrace around me. "Huayang. I too had a dream." I nodded. His voice was strained as he continued, "In my dream, I besieged the Zhou dynasty and found you, but you." I silenced him with a kiss, preventing him from finishing his sentence. Now, this nightmare has truly come to an end. The end of the text. Thank you for listening. Until we meet again in the next story.